from our standards and assessment team. The base of our work is really with the standards document. Okay, so you'll be able to find this online. You have it on your flash drive with the resources that you have. So that's a really important basis for your candidates to deeply understand. Okay, so again, the Root to Be Ready initiative is a birth to third grade initiative that we're supporting across the state. And as you'll notice on the screen, there are a suite of documents that we have developed around this initiative. And one of the things that you heard Liz and I say as we introduced ourselves is we work intently with the Read to Be Ready Coaching Network, which is under that Read to Be Ready initiative. And this initiative is all about supporting strong professional development across 6 semesters, 3 years, and we have 6 instructional outcomes that we support. But it isn't just about providing that professional development. It's also about having that ongoing coaching support that is part of this work as well. So we have our leadership team at the department, and that also extends out to 15 reading coach consultants that are housed around our state. And those folks then go into districts and support district coaches. And the district coaches then go in and support teachers. Of course, then the teachers support the students. And so it's kind of that hierarchy of support with that ongoing embedded nature of the work. For all of the work, we have some grounding documents. One of them is Teaching Literacy in Tennessee, and that's one that you have today. But I'd like to back up from that just a little bit because I want to build up to how we got to this anchor document. There's a suite of documents around some certain questions. First of all, what is reading proficiency? And with that document, we have the vision for third grade reading proficiency. This document sets the definition for third grade reading proficiency and proficiency up to that point. There was a lot of work from our Early Literacy Council around this document, a lot of feedback. Our Early Literacy Council is composed of a variety of stakeholders, including folks from higher ed. We have principals, we have coaches, we have teachers that are in that group that supported this work. And this is just an overview slide. I'll go deeper into some of these ideas that are represented in this work. So this is really what is reading proficiency and creating that common definition. And then how are we doing? We need to know, we need to have a pulse on how things are going. And we have 2 documents that have been released the last 2 Februaries. One, Setting the Foundation. How many of you have seen that document? And the one that was released last February, Building the Framework. And by the way, all of these documents can be found at tn.gov/read-to-be-ready. Okay? So these kind of have that pulse on how things are going. They're based on our literacy walkthrough and data that we're capturing, and then also provide recommendations for next steps. So we'll talk about some of the recommendations a few slides from now with this document. So if the vision for third grade reading proficiency was deep into the what and dipped its toes a bit into the how, the companion document, Teaching Literacy in Tennessee, makes connections to the vision for third grade reading proficiency and then goes much deeper into the how. There's a lot of meat in here, a lot of depth that you are able to go with your candidates within this document. Just give me a quick assessment. Give me a fist of 5 about knowledge about this document. This is the first time I'm seeing it. I've kind of skimmed through it, kind of paged through it. 3, I know it pretty well, or 5, I could be up there presenting about this document, Becky Cox. So give me a quick assessment just to kind of see in the room where we are. Yeah. Okay, so I see some 0s, clear up to just a smattering of 4s, No fives. I don't have any takers to come take this crazy mic. So we will... We'll be going much deeper into this document. We'll have structures where we can collaborate together around this document and really consider how it might support our candidates. Okay, so there are a suite of documents, like I said, that go with this document. We know that the release of a document is not the end. It's just the beginning. And so with this document, we have our RTI manual. Now, I should say here that our work really supports quality Tier 1 instruction for the range of learners, okay? So this document, again, for the range of learners, high quality Tier 1, okay? You'll see like the RTI manual is very comparable. You should feel alignment between those documents, especially the newly revised Tier 1 portion of that document. Tiers, although we know with RTI, we need strong strategic and intensive interventions on top of the core. And the Tier 2 and Tier 3 portions of the document are also undergoing revision currently. So that's work that is being done. So we think about our range of learners, but we also know we have certain population groups that we need to be thinking about. So there are other documents that we have, our dyslexia handbook, our newly released Teaching Literacy in Tennessee EL component. That companion is out. How many of you have seen that one? So provides some nice instructional strategies to support English language learners, as well as just high quality instruction for all learners. And we also have in process a companion document for students who are higher achievers or those identified as gifted, and more to come. So you'll see that there are a lot of documents. We'll talk about unit starters and a lot of related work to really influence and support this work. So let's talk about some common things that you'll see within the work. This is going to build a visual that you'll see in the third grade reading proficiency, the vision for third grade reading proficiency. First of all, you'll see that there is that integration of standards. So we heard our standards team, Sandy and Tammy, talk about the different strands of the standards. So that's a really important piece that we really need to make sure that we have under our belt, that there are different strands. We listen, we read about text, and we write, we speak about text. All of those pieces come together. It's this interwoven tapestry that our students experience. We also know that our range of learners, all of our learners, need access to high quality experiences that are surrounded by text that we use for different purposes. And so on this slide, you'll see that there's that high quality text that is needed. There's intentionality in the text that we choose. So the text complexity matters. So we'll talk about in the next couple of days that purposeful selection of text and how that comes into play. We also know that effective instruction is so important. But it's not just that general pedagogy that matters. It's that content-related pedagogy that Elizabeth mentioned earlier. So how do we teach literacy? How do we teach writing? How do we integrate? All of those are questions that I know that you grapple with your candidates. And so those are important pieces that we also want to make sure that we're articulating well. Daily experiences that are differentiated, that meet the needs of the range of learners. I know what individual students need as they come to the table with me, or we're on the carpet, or we're in the kidney table, around the kidney table during small group instruction. So that's a really important piece that's purposeful. There's meat to it. And we also know that the learning environment matters. So we have environments that we establish that are conducive to having students be independent. We believe that students can rise to meet the rigor of the grade level standards, and our classrooms shout those things. And so that's another important piece. There's rigor. We build schema through the lesson experiences that we have. So I think all of these things you'll notice as a common thread that run through the work. So let's talk a little bit more about these common tenets. It's extremely important, and I hope that you'll find that throughout the documents, these are aligning tenets. And you'll probably start to see them as spiraling elements that are going through our work in the next couple of days and the work beyond. First of all, it is incredibly important that our students can accurately and fluently read and comprehend complex text. Oof. A lot of important pieces within that statement, right? We want students to accurately read. We want them to pull the words off the page in a fluent way because we know that that bridges to making meaning. We know that complex text matters. So we're going to teach them how to navigate through that text and comprehend, which is the heart. That meaning making is the heart. So we want them to be able to do that. And we want them to have a host of tools that they're using. But tools like main idea aren't the end in mind. They are the vehicle. So we show students how we are working together, how these strategies work together, and how proficient readers and writers use different tools for different purposes in concert through the process. And we have different instructional strategies that help us do that. Not only do we want that information to be coming in through listening and through students actively reading and having that scaffolding along the way with strategies to be able to do that, we need them to be active, engaged learners that are able to speak about what they're experiencing and write about it. So providing those as important elements of the ELA block is another thing that we really embrace through the models that you'll experience. We also know that with complex text, we can have breakdowns at the word level. So it's extremely important that we help students experience that strong vocabulary instruction that not only plants those receptive seeds for them to be able to take these words and start to make connections to what they know, but we want them to start to use those words. That's probably the best vocabulary assessment we have, right? Are the students expressing those words through oral and written means? So we want those opportunities. Isabel Beck, her book, Bringing Words to Life. How many of you are familiar with that book? Love Isabel Beck. It's really about that usage of the vocabulary and getting students to be mature language users. We want them to build knowledge about the world. So you'll see a unit design framework that really is about building knowledge. It's about thinking about those meaty topics, going deep with them, and being able to learn and grow across the year and vertically as we go up the grade levels. So all of these are incredibly important pieces. I've been talking for a bit here. I want to give you a chance to articulate what are some connections that you're making with your candidates as we think about this graphic and these common tenets? What are some things that are really circulating in your mind? I invite you to talk to your partner about that, okay? So just a bit of time here. As we share out, I'll have you share out with a really strong voice. Let's just do a quick zip around. What is something that your partner said that you felt was really impactful and you want to add into this conversation? Let's just take a few things right now that are on your mind across the room. So what's something that your partner said that you'd like to share?
My friend Laura said that she would like to use the terminology, for example, informational writing, narrative writing, descriptive writing with her candidates. Instead of saying, do a summary of this article, she's going to say, do an informational writing using the article. So using that language.
So making sure we have common language that is grounded in the standards so that that transition to the field becomes a little bit smoother. Excellent. What else?
My colleague Amy reminded us we need to spend more time in the schools with our partners, observing and having conversation with them.
Opportunities. So really bridging those partnerships that we have to make sure that we're all speaking the same language, because we know from our data it's going to take all of us. That's why we are so glad to have you here and to link arms together. What an important group that you are with so much expertise, and we're so excited to partner together to bridge those relationships and to support that partnership with our folks, district folks. Yeah. All right. So let's think about the status of where we are and think about the last report, building the framework. Knowing that, so these are some of the things that weren't necessarily noticed, and so there are opportunities for growth that we're experiencing as we're out in the classrooms and experiencing what is happening. So first of all, we need our students to be really having strong, impactful foundational skills instruction in connection with connected text. So having those reading and writing experiences that support that explicit and systematic foundational skills instruction. That's one piece. The second piece is we want to make sure that the experiences with text are sequenced coherently, and that they really support students in their knowledge building and their vocabulary acquisition. So that's another piece that we know that is an opportunity for us. We also know it's important for our students to have those strong, rigorous, authentic task experiences, not only at the end of the unit, but daily, more frequently, these incremental experiences that build, that integrate the standard strands and have students apply their learning over time. And we also want them to have to be exposed to a sequence of questions that also get them to a higher space, like Bloom's higher level thinking, and that is that intentional, purposeful planning of questions that we'll talk about in our unit design framework coming up. So let me take you into teaching literacy in Tennessee and the theory of action, because this really grounds this work, and it's extremely. I think you'll share the sense of urgency that we have around this theory. First of all, we need students to be exposed to a high volume of text. So these should be frequent experiences with different levels of text that we're using for different purposes. So we have different instructional strategies that we're providing for our teachers that help to equip them to know how to expose students to this variety of text. So that's one important piece, is having that high volume of text. And we also need our students to be exposed to and reading text that's on or beyond grade level. So beyond grade level, we have the interactive read-aloud experience that we want students to be exposed to text that they can't read for themselves, approximately 1 or 2 grade levels ahead. So that's a really important piece. Shared reading experiences, having them putting on the shoes of a reader in a kind of a pace car approach where they are able to read text for themselves under the guide and support of their teacher. So those are just a few examples. We'll talk more about some of the different instructional strategies that we have. We also, of course, I've already mentioned, we want them to be talking about what they're reading. We want them to be, writing about what they're reading. So having that reading-writing reciprocity is extremely important to this work. And we also want them to grow as a writer. So we'll talk tomorrow about writing and the role it plays. At the last couple of convenings, we've had kind of a lot of affirmations when we say that writing might need to be influenced more. That could be an understatement. We might not be seeing the amount of writing that we need. So we'll talk more about that in the next couple of days. It's an extremely important part of this work, as well as the foundational skills instruction, that really rich, explicit, systematic foundational skills instruction, again, tied to connected text. So all of these pieces come together for that theory of action, and you'll hear much more about this. I won't take much time on this slide, but this really does help us to kind of get an overview of teaching literacy in Tennessee. This is table of contents. So what we'll see here is, again, a connection to the vision for third grade reading proficiency. And you'll also see this theory of action that is based and grounded in research and best practice. So as you page back to the bibliography, you'll notice a pretty hefty bibliography. So take a glance at that. But we want you to know that this is a Tennessee-specific approach. It's not a whole language approach. It's not a phonics first approach. It's not a balanced approach. It's really an approach that we are embracing for Tennessee teachers and students. So that's an important note to make. There are a couple of anchoring elements that we'll talk about in the next couple of days. First of all, the unit design framework. It's going to be a spiral graphic that we'll talk about, as well as the elements of the literacy block that really gets at the integration of the strands of the standards, including foundational literacy standards. You'll see that there's a vignette. So how many of you have been able to experience Mr. Herman's classroom? Yep. So we have Mr. Herman's classroom, and we've had a lot of positive response in the field to Mr. Herman. And guess what we've gotten also in response to Mr. Herman? We want more. So we've responded with some unit starters, which are some examples that we'll talk about in the next couple of days that really bring to life unit design and the integration of the strands of the standards throughout. So you'll see Mr. Herman here. We'll talk more about the unit starters, and you're also going to experience that teacher thinking before, during, and after within this document as well. We've included a glossary too, to make sure that there is common language. We've already touched upon common language here, and that's come up in the last couple convenings, how it's so important that we're all speaking the same language. When we're saying explicit, what do we mean? When we're saying systematic, what do we mean? So a lot of terms and a lot of thought that I know we'll have around that common language that we're using. Here's another foundational piece that I want to make sure that we state as an anchor for this work. This idea of skills-based and knowledge-based competencies. Knowing that we don't want to be heavy with one or the other. We want there to be a balance of both. So let's just quickly briefly walk through skills and knowledge-based competencies. So I think about Scott Paris's work here. And his idea of constrained and unconstrained skills. So first of all, skills-based competencies are like what he articulates as constrained skills. Those skills that are often on a continuum, often form early in the child's development. So those skills such as phonological awareness, phonics, spelling, fluency, it often takes a shorter amount of time. As far as the complete grade perspective, to be able to form these along the continuum. And then we have what Scott Paris calls those unconstrained skills, those knowledge-based competencies such as vocabulary and comprehension, and we have to peel layers of those over time. So as the text becomes more complex, we have to have a little bit more in our back pocket to be able to navigate the complexity of the text. So that's an important piece for us to keep in mind. But again, both of these are extremely important in this work. So that work on both sides of the coin there. And we'll talk about, with the skills-based and knowledge-based competencies, this spiral graphic. So it's this unit design graphic that we have, and we'll talk much deeper. So this is going to be just a quick infomercial, okay? So as we think about unit design, we have two foundational elements on either side of this graphic. On my right, your left, we see the integration of the standards. So you noticed that on the earlier graphic with the arrows from the vision. So we believe that integration of the standards happens throughout the unit. So it's extremely important for our candidates to be able to understand the standards and how to weave them together in this interwoven tapestry. I'm a visual person, so we want it to look like this. So that's an important piece throughout. And on my right, on the graphic, we have students. Students are at the heart of what we do. So throughout the unit, every day, every month, throughout the year, vertically throughout the grade levels, we need to understand our students and what they bring to the table. So that's throughout this graphic as well. And then we have the spiral. So units are formed from concepts. So we'll offer a conceptual hierarchy of thinking in the next few slides when Liz takes over here. So really exploring deep concepts. And concepts that have enduring understandings and essential questions. So enduring understandings, those things with which we want students to grapple that matter. So we're not talking about skimming a surface through topics and just thin themes. We want to go deep with this learning and have students experience essential questions that can't be answered with a yes or no or in one sitting. They have to be immersed in these experiences through text over time and to be able to respond to these questions. Text selection is also an important piece that we'll talk about, and how to sequence text, how to choose text, how to use text for different purposes, as well as the tasks that we provide our students. End of unit tasks that are rigorous and authentic, as well as lesson sequences that have questions that are sequenced with daily tasks that allow students to accumulate their knowledge to be able to get to that end of unit task. So all of these pieces are things that we're going to go much deeper into in the next couple of days.